All right, so that's going to wrap up our biggest losers. John, let's get into the big winners here. Can I kick us off?
I think I
Can I
know who
talk a
you're going
little?
to kick us off with, and I think the thing that he got, the best thing that he got, was a kick. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, actually, I wanted to really quickly, if you don't mind, I wanted to talk about Akuma and Rashid first, because we mentioned before. I'm going out of order here. Can I do this? Can I talk about? Can I mess with your order?
Go for it. Now I look
Okay.
stupid.
Yeah. Well, speaking of looking stupid, Rashid. Capcom, what the hell were you doing? Why did you have an opportunity to you have an opportunity? You addressed Urian, you addressed Cammy. I know you've touched as characters before. You didn't freaking touch Rashid. You didn't touch Akuma. You gave Akuma buffs. What are you doing? What were you thinking? I don't understand what your logic is here. Like, is there like a Akuma Rashid player who's like, is like the boss, or what's going on? Why did you leave these characters intact? It makes me very angry. And they're the biggest winners because all the characters, not all the characters, a bunch of characters around them got nerfed. And it's like, why do you keep these characters so strong? We have a huge history of this here. Why didn't you knock them down a little bit further? They're still doing well enough in tournament. Yeah.
Well, okay. I've heard a lot about Rashid, and we've seen him popping up in top eights. I don't think Akuma's a bad character, but both of these guys got hit decently hard in the last patch, and it felt like this is probably going to be substantial. And as far as Akuma's concerned, it feels like, yeah, I mean, he's still probably a top 10 character, but I don't feel like he's dominating to the point where, I mean, we haven't been talking about how he's got a bunch of issues with his moves and how he's overpowered. It's all been Cammy, And so, but I have heard a lot about Rashid, and so I think if anyone of these two, Rashid could definitely take another nerf or two. And then Akuma, his specific changes, like I said earlier, were more to try to just encourage people to play V Trigger 2 and V Skill 2 because because his V Trigger 1 and V Skill 1 are just so damn good that it's like you have to really make those other ones stronger to make them at all enticing, which is scary that like if they're successful there, that means that they made better V Trigger and better V Skill than what he's already got. So I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm gonna wait before I get too worried about this and see if they start to become like problems. And like I said, sounds like Rashid already sort of is pretty good, but is he too good? I don't know. So I'm not super worried about this, but I do hear what you're saying, and it could be an issue.
Yeah, and I go back to like with Akuma, it's like a lot of people are still playing him in tournament, even with all the stuff that Ryu got. That's how good Akuma is, and that hurts the parity of her game. We've been over this before. I don't want to belabor that point, but it's like when you don't have good Shoto variety, when you're pretty much like defaulted to playing Akuma over all the other Shotos, that's a really bad look for your game, and that's still what's going on right now. And maybe enough time hasn't passed by, as you just said. Maybe time will prove us wrong, but like we have a whole bunch of history of Akuma and Rashid being too good. Like if you didn't get them hard enough, which we both have said they didn't get them hard enough, like get them a little more, kind of thing, like just a little bit more. There's more opportunity. Hey, we just got this balance patch out of nowhere. Maybe it will happen. They got Cammy this time. Maybe Rashid and Akuma are next. It's nice to see this update, but I did have to kick us off there with those guys because it's just like they're so stand out to me. But someone who's a standout for all the wrong reasons would be Nash. And he actually is a winner here, but I don't think he's a big one because I still think he's among the worst characters in the entire game. That's a shame, but maybe no longer being the hands down worst, that's actually a big accomplishment because it's hard to get a character from the worst overall in the game to actually being, are they okay? Are they decent? And Nash's little hop kick now that wasn't used a lot before. It's the jumping Sabat. It looks to be, it can be canceled into V Trigger 1 or V Trigger 2 now. Some people are calling it scrubby and other stuff like that. It's like, that's fine. But I mean, maybe Nash needed it. Maybe he needed a little bit of a scrubby move since, Urian has 15 of them. Maybe give Nash one, kind of
and
thing.
it's a hop kick. Hop kicks have been pains in the butts, traditionally speaking, and they made it better in like every way they possibly could. It's faster, it's farther reaching, it has a better hitbox, it has a smaller hurt box, it does 10 more damage, and like you said, it cancels into both V triggers now. It's like this, and we're talking about a game where neutral is a really big deal. This is just got amazingly better. It's like maybe give them 2 or 3 of these things, not 700 on one move. So I am a little bit nervous that I mean, will this one move make or break him? Maybe not, but it could become really frustrating really quickly. And this is not the only buff that they gave him. They gave him a handful because they were well aware that everybody was like, matter of fact, Nash is the worst and he's a joke. And then that's with a game with Dan in it, you know, so they really don't want that to be the word on the street. And they've made a really big attempt to make it not so.
Yeah, so I'm not huge on the changes for Nash. You seem more excited about him than I do, and you know, time will tell how good it is. It just, for me, like, when you have a bottom tier character, like, and Nash is basically considered bottom one by everyone, and I mean, I don't know if Dan is worse than him or not, but if when you're having that conversation, that's a terrible thing with a joke character versus an actual character you expect people to play, right? And Nash has held on in popularity. Like, a lot of people still play him despite how crappy he is. And shout outs to all the players that I run across who still like keep with that. Like, that takes some skill and some guts to do, right? So I was very happy with this. Like, I've always liked Nash. I think he's a really cool like character in the storyline and other stuff. His gameplay in this game are, you know, a little hit or miss for me. But overall, I don't mind seeing him, you know, better. And I did want to hype it up that I do think he's definitely got more potential now than he's had in a long time. But unfortunately, he was just so low on the tier list before. I don't know if it brought him up a lot. So.
We've seen a lot of characters, like I think of Vega in season 2, where he gets this like laundry list of updates, of buffs, right? And you go, oh, there's no way he's not going to be the best character in the game, like with all of these. And realistically, it just kind of barely moves the needle because they didn't hit the right thing or the right few things. This could be that kind of a case, and Nash is, as we've seen, he's going to need quite a bit to move up a substantial amount. That said, he's better at neutral, he's better at offensive pressure, and he has more Oki after his successful hits. It's like, those are some really valuable things, man. Yeah. So I am interested to see how this plays out. A few other things he's got is his tragedy assault does more. That's when he it's like a striking grab where he puts his hand on your face and smashes your head into the ground. It does more damage, it does more stun, and it has 13 more frames of advantage. So that's where you're seeing that he, you know, gets more Oki after successful hits, because he oftentimes will end combos with that move. Standing light kick is +3, which that's great in and of itself. But I think the better thing there is that if he gets that as a counter hit, he can go into his medium button combos, and that's pretty nice for him to be able to do. Similar treatment to his crouching medium kick. I think it's +4 now. But again, it's like, it's not so much that's great in and of itself, but if he sets you up with a frame trap and he gets you with that move or his standing light kick, now that counter hit bonus where he has extra advantage means he can go into really meaty or really beefy combos. And so it's like, we'll see if those setups equate to like some regular counter hit kind of situations that are effective. That could shoot Nash up the tier list pretty quickly. So I'm intrigued to see. They definitely gave him a fair shot here, I'll say that.
Yeah, it's the history shows, and you were talking about standing light kick. This is three frame normal, and it needs to be repeated about that because he hasn't had a 3-frame normal ever. You know, this is, they just gave it to him, and the fact that they're already looking at buffing it, and as you see on counter hit, it goes into combos. That's a big deal because he's in a defensive mode right at that point, and now he's able to reverse the matchup. And you know, we've talked a lot about G on the podcast here about how he would be in a defensive spot, but he'd hit you with his 4-frame normal, and he'd go into the business, as you would like to say. I'm not as worried about that with Nash because he's not that style of character, but that is a powerful tool in Street Fighter V. When you are defensive, to be able to interrupt with a jab and then go into your stuff at that point, that's a big deal. So I see why you're a bit more hyped up about it. I didn't notice it initially when I was going over that, but that is it could be potentially a substantial change, and I'm a little bit more positive about that now. So,
and like all Nash. These things, I
couldn't resist.
All of these things, you get 10 points for that one for sure. All of these kind of sharpen each other too, because if he's getting more Oki, he's more readily up in your face, and he can potentially get these counter hits more often too. So they all feed into each other. Next up on the list, Ken. My notes from here, he's not as dependent on V-Skill 1 to do his stuff. And that, of course, is his run that you see like every Ken using all the time. V-Skill 2 is when he does kind of like a rainbow kick, similar to like, I think Sean had a similar move in Street Fighter 3. Yeah. And so like he used to need to use that forward moving dash V-Skill to either continue combos or to make up that space really quickly and you know, for certain setups, for certain combos, things like that. But now some of his moves either do less pushback, or like his heavy DP reaches farther forward, his heavy kick crush counter, that knocks you into the air, but that keeps you suspended spinning in the air for a little bit longer now. So he doesn't need to do that and then go into V skill 1. He can just do a regular forward dash and then use that DP. So what they're clearly trying to do first and foremost is not make him so reliant on V skill 1, which I think they've done here. But then that also opens up, okay, so there's some different ways to play Ken. And it's weird though, because if he's so centered on that V skill 1 and you take away from it, then like maybe it's going to make it moot. But honestly, like it's later in the game now. Maybe we want to see more V skill 2, V trigger 2 Ken, like playing in a different way, because it hasn't been all that fun to play against him, especially when he was relatively decent back in the day. And I don't think Ken players have been having a lot of fun themselves the way the character is. So I like this kind of change to maybe kind of put him on a new trajectory. He's still rush down, but he can do it in slightly different ways now. And I think that's kind of cool. And I'm excited to see where he goes too.
Yeah, he got a lot of quality of life buffs, which I was actually really happy to see. And they don't tend to feed into like being too crazy, like a little bit of it, but also it's like it's kind of like the Street Fighter 5 crazy, where it's like I think it's an acceptable level of crazy. Like there's Kin crazy, and then there's Street Fighter 5 crazy, different things. But his heavy shuriken, it's got more horizontal range, which is nice. His stand heavy kick will pop someone up into the air to convert off of a little bit easier. As you were talking about V-Skill 1, his run was kind of the only way to convert off that in a lot of scenarios. Where now it's like it's pretty easy to actually convert off it. I think he might even have some kind of cool stuff, like maybe some mix-ups or whatever afterwards, which is, I mean, hey, if you land a crush counter in neutral, like you should get a pretty good reward from it, right? And you know, so basically, like you had to kind of use V-Skill 1 to get that, and now you don't have to, and it's like, oh, good stuff, right? And then both his crouching medium punch and crouching medium kick, which are really good tools for Kin and neutral and other stuff, they have less pushback on hit, which basically means he's less stubby. So all of his combos and stuff are going to work just a little bit better, right? And so this is one of the cases why he's a big winner, is when Capcom takes your main tools and makes them all better. That's a big thing. You know, so I don't think he's light years better, but he's definitely like, if you're a Kin player, I think you're quite happy about this. I don't know if you're ecstatic, but you're like, oh, wow, okay, my life is better now. You know, like this is just going to be, you know, more enjoyable to play him and other stuff. So I'm not predicting a dramatic rise up through the tiers, but I do think you're going to see a few more Kin people maybe come back to the character, or a few more people playing him on the regular, because it's like, oh, it's actually worth doing it now.
It's more
actually worth
fun, right? Like you can now approach Ken more than you could before and rely on footsie, pokes, whiff punishing, and then you can get something out of those, right? You get that low forward, go into the DP, or the I guess it was Akuma that got a better Tatsu after low forward and such. But my point is, if he gets those hits, he doesn't have to just rely on V skill 1 to convert off of them. So it's not such an integral, important part of his gameplay. You can actually explore other things about him. But even beyond that, it's like you can do something worthwhile, and that's fun. And so I like that, because I don't want to see Ken become amazingly good, because in this game, a lot of his stuff is just like get up in your face and goofy 50-50s and such. I do like that if he can hang out and play like a more honest but rewarding neutral game, that's exactly what I want to see. Yeah. Exactly.
You keep the level of crazy he has. Like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Kin was perfect. He had his crazy kicks, literally called crazy kicks by the community. And but anyway, he was about a mid-tier character in that game. A lot of people thought old Kin was a little bit better and stuff. But Capcom actually made some really interesting design choices with him, where they made his like light Dragon Punch have less invincibility. And the reason how come they did that was they basically, like, light Dragon Punch was always the answer almost in every scenario. And they're like, well, let's alter it so that, you know, this one has more invincibility in this scenario, and this one's kind of for anti-airs and other stuff. It's like, he has different strength Dragon Punches. Use the right one for the right scenario. Put some thought and stuff into it. And it's funny how often the archetypes that were established 30 years ago, they still hold up pretty well to this very day. It's like, yeah, Sagat should be back there chucking plasma. And if he's not able to do that properly, that's probably you messed up somewhere along the way, right? Yep. And same thing with Kin. Like, he does well as a mid-tier character somewhere around there, and make him pretty crazy. Like, it's Kin, and it's like, if Kin isn't crazy, like, if Kin was like this, like, really, like, methodical and, like, you know, hang back character, it'd be like, that's not Kin. What the hell? Like, you don't even, you've ruined the essence of the character. Like, he has to be crazy. He has to have some weird stuff thrown in there, but you want the proper amount of it, and usually that means making him kind of a mid-ish tier character. And so, like, I like, really like what Capcom did good here. And you know, we give him so much crap about when we don't like their changes. I definitely wanted to hype up and say, hey, this is really good. You know, I know a lot of Kin players want to see him back from season 1. I don't think it's ever happening. You know, season 1 Kin was bonkers and is never coming back. At least never should. Yeah, but like, it's like, hey, if you play Kin, this is what you play him for, right? It's I don't play Rose and expect to be able to have 50 command grabs and other stuff like that. That's
Right.
you play a character because that's their archetype. That's how they play. And Capcom did, I think, a great job with Kin.
Well, you know what they're trying to make Seth's identity all about as a character is V system, because they just gave Seth overhaul with V skills and V trigger 2. Now, V Trigger 2 was already pretty damn situational even before Season 5 with the V Shift, because if you basically, and I played Seth for a while, if you had it, you would either have to combo into it for a cool like reset and situation, but a lot of it would also be because you'd want to combo into it on block and then put your opponent into a mix-up with it, but you couldn't do that if they had V Reversal, because they just knock you down and then be gone. Season 5 rolls around and you have another defensive technique that works really well against this particular this, by the way, is the orb, which has like the ever-present hitbox to it, right? Now you have V shift to get away from it as well, and as Shen said, it's like, man, it's a completely moot V trigger at this point. It's not really a thing anymore, and I don't remember the last time I saw Seth trying to use this V trigger until now. They've changed it to, I say they make it more appealing. It might be much better, because the way V trigger works now, V trigger 2, the orb always explodes. It doesn't just disappear, and Seth doesn't have to do the input where he does the animation where it explodes. He can do that, and if he hits you with that, it pops you up just like it always has. But now, anytime the orb expires, it explodes, and if you get hit by that type of the explosion, it'll hit you, and you'll stay standing, but it's just like you got hit with like a medium punch or something like that. There's some hits done to it. This means that if you V reversal his V trigger 2, then on block, obviously, you will get hit by it, and he can actually stand up and punish you. And this is even characters that knock down, like Ryu. So Ryu knock down, that V trigger will still be there. It'll hit him, and then it'll explode for a 2-hit combo. In that time, Seth can stand up and get a full combo. You can no longer V reversal. At least you can't V reversal the strike V reversals. Now, some of the maneuver movement V reversals, I haven't put those under the microscope yet. I'm not sure, but this has become a V trigger again. Not only that, he's got more ways to build V gauge in both of his V skills, as V skill 2 now builds, I think, 20 more gauge than it used to. V skill 1, that's got some sexy changes. But I'm going pretty fast. Do you have any comments to make about the stuff so far? All right, we're going to keep going. V skill 1, that's his tandem engine, where he sucks you in, and then if it's successful, he can steal one of your moves away. It builds V gauge just on the suck in part, but also if he pulls you in there, he's +3, which means he can combo. Instead of going into the grab where he steals your move, he can now go into his jab, and then like jab DP, jab Hekatonkeries, whatever. If he hits you counter hit, he's now +5, and he can go into a medium combo with this move. And this move catches a lot of people out there in the neutral. Now, it was reduced in its range at the beginning of Season 5, thank goodness. So it's not as good as it used to be, but now it's got these added buffs to it. He's going to get to V trigger faster, and he's got more potential routes out of it. And in certain scenarios, like where you would maybe trade that V trigger 2, he can maybe use that trade to suck you in with a V skill and go into a combo that way. So a lot of new potential with Seth. Oh, and they also made his axe kick when it's in the middle of the combo after the EX, I don't remember the name of the move, but the kick launcher that he goes up and meets you midair and then goes into the axe kick, that's more consistent now too. Not a huge change to the axe kick, just a little quality of life thing. But Seth got some stuff, and now V Trigger 2 might be a thing. And if it's a big thing, it might be a problem. Who knows? But that's definitely something to be wary of, where we didn't have to worry about it hardly at all before.
Yeah, Seth is one of the more technical characters in the game, and if you're going to make a character powerful, make them very hard to play. And I played against your Seth a lot, and I know the work and time you put in. That was not an easy character for you to like get wins with. You had to work pretty hard.
Well,
and we saw in some instances and stuff like that. There was a little bit too much of like, I know you didn't abuse like the
I
axe
didn't
kick
do
a
enough
lot.
axe kick. Yeah, but that's what you could do that, and you could get way too much mileage out of it.
And that's what they nerfed. And it's like, okay, well, this is how you address a character. And if you go too far, you buff him back up. And I think this character is definitely better for sure, as you're just talking about. I think maybe, I really think that the rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated, right? I had them still around a top 20 spot. And maybe they're into the top 10 or top 15 now. But if they're one of the most technical characters in the game, this is where they should be. This is, if you have a character who's extremely hard to play, there's just too much incentive to go pick, Cammy or Bison or Rashid for that matter. And it's just like, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I could work harder, but why would I? And it's like, well, duh, that's what everyone's going to freaking do. Seth was the ultimate pocket character last year. They did need nerfs, and I'm glad to see like the range reduced on this, like on the Visco one, right? Like, because it was just very too often, like you would be in neutrals trying to play footsie, and like they would just kind of Visco one either randomly or just in anticipation. It would just pull you in from way too far. It was like Dawson level like limb range and stuff, and so having that kind of conversion with what they've given them now would be way too much, but it was too little before, right? Like Seth kind of dropped off the face of the planet. There's a few people playing them, but they're a very stylish character. They're a very good character, I think, to have up at the top of the tier list, because again, whenever you're introducing in like a lot of levels of human error and other problems, and you're requiring the other person to have a lot of skill to play a character, you need to give the community incentive to play them, right? And if you don't believe me, look at Gin in Street Fighter 4 because there was like a handful of people who could play Gin at a super high level, very hard to play, just not enough reward for doing it, right? And so he went unplayed by a lot of people,
and lo and behold, he was an Evo winning worthy character.
Yes, and it snuck up on a lot of people. Shouts to CN for doing that, and a number of other people for putting him on the map. But it's you want to see these characters showcase more, and Seth is a good character to showcase. Let's have them back up, but have them up for the right reasons, not because they're scrubby, abusable axe kick stuff, but because it's like, oh, this is a really good technical showcase character of what we've done with this game from a design perspective and from a just kind of like gameplay perspective. They've got some good tools. Let's feature them. Right. And so I'm pretty darn happy about this. Like I never had a big problem with Seth to begin with, but I'm glad to see them back up there. So.
Now, I'm not sure exactly where we've come down on this next character, because we're like, all right, it sounds like this is a really good change. Oh, maybe it's not so good of a change. Maybe it's a really good change. And that is Gill. Now, he got two things in particular. The first one, straightforward enough. His EX knees is now a better kind of anti-air, where if he's going up and you're coming down at him, he can kind of use it as an anti-air. Great, whatever. The big thing here is that his retribution now builds critical art meter. And I don't know if you know this, but Gill is very dependent on critical art. He uses it a lot in his...
Definitely breaking some news for me there. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. We play against Dream King a lot, and sure enough, he often uses EX fireballs to paint you with his various like either his fire or his ice, and then if he hits you with the opposite, what do they call it in the patch notes? His anti-type. But that causes retribution. That's where it pops you up, and that's where he can get his really long combos that carry you to the corner and go on forever and such. Well, now it seems that as he's doing these, it's going to build more meter, so Gill's going to naturally have more critical art, although it does seem to be where it's not in mid combo. It's only this buff to his meter building only happens if he hits you with retribution, like from the neutral or from not within the middle of a combo, which that's like, I don't know how often that's...
Early testing, that's what it is. We're not sure. Like Dream King only was able to play a handful of matches and get back to us on it. So, but right now, as you're saying, it has to kind of be a little bit more raw, kind of like, as you say, in the neutral, are kind of converting off of that. But it also, when that happens, you're building 1/4 of a bar of super gauge. So it's pretty.
I thought it was closer to like a third too. Maybe it is a fourth. I don't know, but it's substantial. Like he's getting some meter, and he uses meter. So like, he's better at the thing that he's already good at. Now, my main question here is that what he needed? Did he need more in this particular category? Or would it have been better for him to get something else that would actually work better with his gameplay? The metaphor I was kind of using here as we were talking about it was, if you're like the tallest player on a basketball team and you're the center, right? And you're already really good at guarding and such, and you were able to, they buffed you by, they made you taller by an inch. And it's like, well, that's going to be something. You're going to be able to do a little bit more with that. But would it have been better for you to get better ball handling skills or to be a little bit faster? And that would have really helped you to get done what you need to get done, because Gill is one of those characters that everyone has like zero faith in, apparently. And he gets talked about a lot as tragically bad and just is not good. And I know that we don't really agree with that. But this is someone that the community widely did want to see buffed, and this is something. But it's like, are we giving his nuclear bomb slightly more power? And it's like, where it's not going to do him all that much good. That's what I'm kind of worried about here.
Yeah, I like this change overall. But I mean, when it comes to low tier characters, we've been over it so much where it's like, there's about 50 things you could realistically do to help them, right? And it's just what paths are you picking? But I really like this for Gill because he has one of the best supers in the game, and his ability to convert off of it and get like 600 damage off of like just a stray hit or two is gigantic. I was just playing Dream King and playing my Rose against him, and I had like 60% of my health left, and like he got me with a random crouching medium punch, and then just did this gigantic combo and killed me. And
bad game design.
And went into super with it, and so it's like his ability to get that more often now is, I think, going to be a thing. And one of I think his biggest buffs here is actually going to be in the perception category, because I think he's criminally underrated. Now, again, we play against Dream King a lot, and I play against a lot of Gills online. Like, it's shocking for as low tier as people make him out to be. Like, I play against him all the time, and there's some really good players with him. I don't think he's anywhere near as bad as he is, and I think that these patch notes are going to kind of be an excuse for people to revise their opinion of him a bit, because I don't think he's a bottom 5 character. I never have. I think he's better than that. It just he has the opposite of what I just talked about with Seth, where he's very technical and very hard to play, and he's not a great character for putting that amount of time in. But still, if you put that amount of time in, he's still like I think more of like in the bottom 10, not bottom 5, right? Somewhere around like the 30-ish range or somewhere around there. Still not great, but to go back to your question, I think this is a way of addressing him, and it basically it checks the box that you talked about before. It's like, look, if Capcom, if you have a decidedly low tier character, go ahead and give him some buffs to make a difference. Go ahead and make an impact, and then kind of see where it ends up. But if it's not enough, 2 or 3 months from now, go further. And talking with Dream King about this, he's like, I would give this change like a 5 out of 10, which is pretty solid. It's an early read and stuff on it, but he's like, there's potential for quite a bit more here, because this might fundamentally change the way he plays in neutral. Yes. And he's a good character in neutral with all of his fireballs and anti-airs and other stuff like that. He can do some stuff in neutral that's pretty damn potent. And if you make that even better, like, and then you couple that with his rush down and other stuff, which just we're talking about, like some of his rush down damage is insane. Mm-hmm. Like, and when Dream King hits you with one of his freaking Dream King combos, screw that. But like you're just sitting there watching it for 10 seconds, and you're just watching your health deplete to nothing. And unless you're Cammy, you can't really avoid a super that well. So. Anyway, I really like this. I think a Gill is a clear winner. This fits all the criteria. Like, since Capcom didn't give him enough and the major season balance patch, I'm glad to see a change like this. And maybe there's 2 or 3 more down the road for him, but it's like, this is giving Gill players an incentive to keep looking at the character a little bit more. Maybe it's enough. It's probably not, but it's definitely, it moves the needle for him, if you ask me.
Yeah. One of the things that Dream King mentioned was that this might, as you were kind of getting at, change the way people approach him, because it might make like dropping the combos in lieu of a reset, where he might get, if he hits the reset, it's also into retribution, which is also giving him that meter bonus, something like that. So maybe now, instead of really long combos, he does half of them, and then he drops it and he puts you in a sticky situation where you've been painted by the combo and you have to worry about it. And if that happens, and if that translates into more effective gameplay, that's the way I see Gill going up from this kind of a change. But there's a couple of big ifs in that process, so we'll see. I'm skeptical of this, but it's something. It's definitely something. Yeah. So he's an inch taller.
Yeah, and one of the things that Dream Team talked about for the Gill fans out there is hitting someone, we call it painting them with an element, right? The ice element freezes your stun gauge. So maybe you end a combo with like, an ice painting, and then like that next hit is going to build a bunch of meter, plus it's going to be a retribution and other stuff. So if you're close to super, or you're close to a setup with Gill's meter stuff, since he's so meter dependent, this could be a very efficient way of making the character better. Now, a lot of ifs, a lot of buts, as you just said, but if you are a Gill fan, look at some of the ice setups, because Dream King usually has a really good read on this stuff. And there might be some stuff you can really do with them now that you could not before. So, all right.
That was weird. It felt like we just had like some weird time jump. But anyways, Lucia.
Yeah.
So Lucia is the last character that I wanted to get to here. And she actually has a handful of different notes, but there's kind of a general gist of the significance of her changes here. And that is that she doesn't have to choose anymore as much between damage and Oki. Lucia's been kind of a stubby character. Now she has ways to play the neutral game, especially with her fireballs and then her runs. She can kind of pounce on you, but she's not the farthest reaching character. And so when she does get in and she does score that damage, which she hits pretty hard, and man, she's got one of those critical arts that it's like if she tacks that on to the end of one of her combos, especially a V-trigger one, you're surprised by the damage every time. But so damage really isn't her issue, but she gets her damage and then she often goes right back into neutral. And that's the problem, because she can't capitalize. And I mean, she did make it into the top 8 of the most recent CPT, so that's something. But outside of that, we have not seen much action with Lucia. So what it seems to do, or what Capcom seems to have tried to do with her here, is to give her both, once she gets the hit, that damage and some follow-up Oki pressure. And the way they're achieving on that in a lot of situations is like in the moves that she'll use to end combos, like her DP, she'll fall faster. So now she can get back onto the ground and get up next to you before you've woken up, so that she can continue to apply pressure. That to me is a little bit scary. Characters that stick on you with V-shift are not as scary as they used to be. And the neutral is as such where it's like, it's nice to you can hold a lot of characters at bay like you couldn't before. So maybe not the worst thing in the world, but man, I've seen Lucia damage, and to see her get Oki after damage like that, that's a little, not a red flag, but a burnt orange flag for me.
It jumps out to me like, I look at someone like Cammy and Rashid and other stuff, and it's like, to be a really good rushdown character, it's kind of what you need in this game. And I think Lucia is very proven in terms of like, she's not the greatest of characters. And so I'm pretty happy to see the buffs, because I do think she's very interesting. I love her fireball kicks and all that kind of stuff. Even though she has that, like, she doesn't typically get a lot of mileage from actually zoning. She's just using them to kind of like get in, right? And if you stand at the right ranges against Lucia, that makes her fireball game pretty hard to do. And so I do think Lucia is one of the classic characters that falls apart once you really lab her a lot, but how many people are labbing her a lot, right? And so I think her tier ranking and all that kind of stuff has been pretty appropriate. And I think that if you're going to make her a rushdown character, I think that is the kind of stuff she needs. But again, we've also seen how that can go sideways in just a minute. And we've been crying for Cammy nerfs now for a while, right? So the last thing we want to do is have Lucia take Cammy's place as like that's not what we're aiming for. But like, I don't think that's ever going to be too much of an issue, because Lucia is actually genuinely, much more difficult to play than Cammy. Her stuff requires some brain power, things of that nature. But your worries here are not entirely off base. It's like, we've seen how this can go sideways.
Yeah. So, but give Lucia a chance. It's fine. I say here on May 19th of 2021, before the dark times of Lucia reigning supreme over everyone. But yeah, so I think it's a good thing. I think it's good to give characters that haven't had their time in the limelight a little potential for success, and I think that's what they gave Lucia here. And we'll see how things resonate once she's out in the wild, if players give her enough of a chance, which they have a reason to now. So good luck.
Yeah, I'm really happy about this too. This is what I want to see Capcom do with the lower tier characters in this game, and I'm really happy to see it for Lucia. So, all right, y'all, that's going to wrap us up for this week of the Event Hubs podcast. Once again, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll be back with you soon.
See you.